Hey there, how you doing? Hope everyone's having a wonderful Monday, and we are here again. We're gonna do follow along Friday. Yes, we definitely realized today's Monday, even though we're doing follow along Friday. We got a podcast to record, so that's why we record on Monday so that we can get it all ready for Friday, Friday's episode. And Theo Hicks, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, Joe. Glad to be back.
Yeah.
Third time.
Third time, yep. Looking forward to diving in. And so, everyone, so just so you know, if you is the first time checking out Facebook Live with us, we are recording a Friday episode for the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show, and it will air to the best ever listeners via the podcast this Friday. But today, you'll get a sneak peek. Well, actually, you'll get the whole darn thing, right? Because we're doing it live right now. So, you ready to get going?
Do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Best ever listeners, how you doing? Welcome to the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show. I'm Joe Fairless. This is the world's longest running daily real estate podcast. I am with Theo Hicks. How you doing, Theo?
Doing good, Joe. Glad to be back.
Yeah, nice to have you back on Follow Along Friday. And the purpose of Follow Along Friday is to talk about all the things we've got going on in our entrepreneurial endeavors. And specifically, we're going to talk about branding, because that's something that's very important from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And we are also going to talk about, a trip I took last Friday to Columbus, Ohio, to look at apartment community and a couple other things. So, that being said, we'll go ahead and dive right in. That good with you?
Yeah, let me start with your trip to Columbus.
Yes.
And I was supposed to go to that, but I had some best ever book finishing touch to put on. So
Yes.
I'm doing that all day.
We're in the final stages of doing the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever book, Volume 2.
Yep.
And looking forward to that. We've got all the chapters written. Theo is putting the finishing touches on it. On Friday, we are getting it edited one more time because one I was going to say constructive feedback, but really it's just one criticism we had on the first book was that it wasn't proofread well enough. We hired somebody from Upwork on the first book to proofread it. This time, I believe we're doing it 2 rounds of proofreading. Is that right?
So I guess, and this is something I just realized very recently. This is silly, but I didn't know this. But there's a difference between copy editing and proofreading. They're 2 completely separate things.
Copy editing is more an art form.
Yeah, exactly. Copy editing is more of structure and just kind of the overall structure and flow. But they don't check for typos or grammar or sentence structure. It's more like overall structure. Whereas the I guess proofreaders are the ones that actually edit for the typos, grammar, everything like that. And so again, that's a perfect lesson learned from last time because we didn't know that, and that's why we got that comment as to there being some issues with grammar because we didn't get a check for grammar because we didn't know. But now we know, so this time around it's gonna be a lot better. It's gonna be a lot more grammatically sound.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the most I will take all day long criticism on grammar, spelling, punctuation versus actual content. We've got 65 reviews on Amazon on the first book, and I think like 63 of them are either 4-star or 5-star. We've got a couple 1-stars because that's just how things operate when you put yourself out there in the world. And they are talking about the content, and they're happy with the content. And you know what? I'm all in on that approach if I have to choose which path to take, which thing to have more polished and which one not to be more polished. That being said, might as well try and have it a all around good experience and get everything knocked out. And obviously, with any time you publish a book and you don't go through an official publisher, then you're not going to have it as polished as what you would if you did, I suspect. But you know what? We'll do our best to make the grammar, spelling, punctuation better, and the content in the second book. It will blow you away. Grant Cardone has a chapter in the book or when I interviewed Grant on the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show, talking about how he used a video LOI to get awarded a large multifamily deal, as well as a whole bunch of other chapters from how to quit your 9-to-5 job and do real estate investing. And what I love about these books, and obviously I'm biased, but what I love about these books is that it's not hypothetical stuff. It is real life, and they're real examples of how people today are achieving things in real estate investing, from breaking free from your 9-to-5 job to how to qualify a development deal to what other stuff.
Well, I was gonna say, because on the first book it was more niche specific. So it was like, here's a collection of fix and flip stories. Here's a collection of buy and hold stories, and here's a collection of kind of hybrid strategies. Whereas this one right here, it covers so much more. It's a lot. It covers crowdfunding, a lot of different brokers and the strategies that they use to get clients and to find deals, which can be used by investors, obviously, because they need to find deals. So a lot of things on finding deals. There's multiple chapters on how to raise money. So I don't think that was in the last book at all. So like there's how to become a money raising machine is one of the chapter titles. So it's a lot. It's a lot wider range of topics than the first book. So you've got two complementing books that you can. You're not going to find repeat information in the second book that's in the first book. I guess.
These are new people. Yeah, new people, similar structure, but different content, and I always want to model after others. That's how I've gotten to where I'm at, is I simply see what others are doing, and I identify aspects of how they got from where they were to where they are, and I mirror those aspects, or replicate those aspects, or copycat those aspects. I mean, if we're going to speak plainly. So, looking forward to that. And you were working on the book. I went to Columbus, Ohio. I toured a property. It is an on-market deal in Columbus, Ohio. It is probably at the top of our list for ideal next acquisitions, because it is in such a highly sought-after area, and there's an opportunity to increase rents. What we look for is very good areas with good school districts. That way it attracts families and people who want to stay there longer because their kids are in school, or they just enjoy a nice area. And we always want to find a place that has upside potential. And whenever I go to these tours, what I look for is, can we increase rents? That's basically what I'm looking for, because we can do a lot of math and spreadsheet work prior to getting there, but when you're there, it's important to ask the questions to the property manager, like, when was the last rent increase you did? How are you qualifying people? Have you done any renovations? What other type of projects have you done? If I could give you a bucket full of money, what would you do to the property? Why do people move in here? Why don't people move in here? Who are your competitors? Who do they move to if they don't move in with you? And asking those types of questions, as well as looking at the type of renovations that are done, the type of finishes. So are they renovating the countertops and the fixtures, or are they just putting in new flooring, or are they putting in, if they are putting in countertops, what kind of countertops are they putting in? What type of appliances are they putting in? What rent increases have they achieved as a result of any of the combination of those things? Are they doing the bathrooms as well as the kitchens? Those are the type of questions that I ask whenever I'm there, and I look at whenever I'm there. And then I go to the competitors, and I secret shop the competitors. I pretend I'm renting, and I ask similar questions, but clearly it's not as direct with some of those that I just mentioned. And the goal of that is to know where the subject property we're evaluating stacks up against the other properties that were named as the number 1 and number 2 and number 3 competitors. And that's what I did whenever I was in Columbus last Friday, looking at those the subject deal as well as the competitors. Everything checked out, and we will be making an offer this week on it, and then see where we go from there.
So this was an on-market deal. I know the last time I went to Columbus, that was an off-market deal.
Yep.
What are some distinctions, or how do you? I guess what are the differences when you're approaching an off-market deal versus an on-market deal?
Well, with on-market deals, you don't have to act as fast.
Okay.
Off-market deals, you need to act faster because it's off-market and you want to snatch it up before others snatch it up. I think that's the main thing. Other than that, perhaps with an off-market deal, you need to go in more skeptical on the operations and the expenses and the finances because they haven't had a broker or brokerage look over the numbers and come up with their own analysis and have a reality check with the owner based on what they're seeing. But that's not always the case. Depends on the broker and what they're looking for. Those are the two main differences I can think of.
And for these questions, all those lists of questions you're asking, which are all amazing questions, are you asking those to the broker, or are you actually talking to the actual property managers? And if you're talking to the property manager, do they know that you're a potential buyer, or are you still doing that kind of secret shopping?
If it's on market, they know I'm a potential buyer. Okay. If it's off market, then you probably, it depends on the situation. For example, we have over 500 units right now under contract in Dallas-Fort Worth. One on market, one off market. They're across the street from each other. We're buying them together. And the one that was off market, the owner couldn't set us up with a tour because before we had it under contract, he hadn't told his team that it was for sale, that he was selling it to us. So because of that, he said just go there and pretend you're a renter and try and find out as much as you can. And that's what we did. Not typical, but whatever. You do what you need to do to get the intel that you need. As far as for on-market deals, if you're there, then they know you're a buyer, so you can just ask whatever you need to ask. And some of those questions are more broker related. But most of them, a good property manager or a district manager who oversees multiple properties for the owner's company should be able to answer.
And when you're asking all these questions, are you with a notebook having all the specific answers to all these questions and kind of taking all that into account, or is it kind of just you've been doing it for so long, it's more of an overall feel as to is this going to align with kind of the property we're looking for, or is it somewhere in between?
It's in between. If I am secret shopping, then I'll get a rent printed out. That way I can write down, or if it's written down already, that way I have a reference point. Because if I tried to memorize all the rents with everything else, that would be tough.
Yeah.
For example, when I was in Columbus on Friday, I got a pamphlet from one of the apartment communities I was secret shopping, and it had the rents written in, but then I was asking about the garages that were right across from the apartment door, and they said, oh yes, you can rent those out for $75 a month. Okay, so I write down $75 a month. I see that they have a washer and dryer hookup, so I asked about that, and that was going to be included in the rent once they provided them. So I wrote down, includes washer and dryer units, not only hookups, but all the units have washers and dryers with them. So that I included that. Then I learned about another program that they had with their appliances and how they include stainless steel front appliances. Okay. And I made sure I wrote that down. But other stuff like amenities or things like that, usually I can find that online. And then if it's on market and I'm asking about when was the last increase in rents, when's the last time you rented out a renovated unit, what are some differentiating features this property has toward compared to your competitors, I will write most of that stuff down if I think that I'm going to forget it by the time I get to my car. But I do have a notepad in front of me. I'm taking notes. A lot of people have their phones, whatever works for you. But I'm a huge note taker. Every call that I have during the day with my clients, with my investors, or with new contacts that I come across daily and I have calls with, I open up a Word document, I write the date, write their name, and I have just bullet points. I'm just typing while we're talking, because it's wonderful to be able to go back and reference those conversations under this person's name. I just have a folder on my desktop that says phone conversations. I just drag the Word doc into that phone conversation folder, and then when they call again, I just open up the phone conversation folder, go to their name, open it up, and I can see right where we picked up.
Oh, that's an awesome strategy. I've actually been thinking about. I know you've talked about that before, about how you take notes on all the phone calls that you have, and I think that is a really great way to kind of deepen a relationship with people versus kind of just kind of picking up from scratch and really not having any sort of background. Because whenever I come over here, you ask me a bunch of questions. I kind of you don't just start right away. It's like, oh, like how's your weekend? Like, oh, remember last time you said this, and it kind of makes you feel a lot more connected with someone that happens, and that's like how to be more connected with people. That's like some of I've been trying to strategize ways to do that. And I've heard you say that before, but now it's kind of clicking. It's like, oh yeah, that's why he does that. But one additional question I had about the kind of this new deal is that. So you go there, you take all the notes, and you do everything at the actual site, and then you get in your car. What are the next steps from you get in your car and you're leaving to, all right, we're going to make an offer on this property? Like, what do you do in between those two?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. It's probably not typical for most people, but then I'll tell you what I used to do.
Okay.
What I do now is, as soon as I get in the car, I call my assistant, and I tell her all the things that were on paper or in my head, and at the top it will be the property name and then bullet points of everything I came across, like rent per unit and what the square footage is of each unit, and then all those miscellaneous things I just went through, and then the next property name, then bullet points, next property name, bullet points. Then I have them documented, and I will send that to my business partner, and we'll review that together.
Okay.
After that, we'll make sure that there's nothing that needs to be updated in our financial model, which something does usually, or multiple things usually do need to be updated after doing an in-person visit. Then once we have that updated, we'll make an offer. I mean, it's pretty simple, because by the time we visit a property, we will have already put together our financial model. Really, this is just a matter of truing things up and making sure that we have all the aspects covered at this point in the game before submitting an offer. And like I said, now we're ready to submit the offer, and we'll be doing so this week.
And then you calculate that offer, so you have the financials done before going in there, and then as you go there to make sure that hey, they didn't lie about or they not necessarily lie, but your renovations number may have been off based off of you seeing that these units are not nice at all, or well, they're really nice if I gotta really do any renovations, or this this parking lot needs to be fixed, and then you're calculating that offer number based off of like a cap rate or a return, and that's how you're figuring out this is how much we're going to offer, kind of regardless of what it's even listed for. You don't even really look at that. Right,
and most of the time now, there's not a price that they have publicly disclosed.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It will say to be determined by market, but it's pretty ridiculous that brokers put that, because all you have to do is you have to call them up, and then you say, hey, what's the whisper price? Or what do you think this will trade at? And then they'll tell you the price that the owner's looking for. So I don't know why we have to play that game, but we do, and so you have an idea of what they're looking for.
Okay, so that's a key distinction between big multifamilies and single families and duplex, because you're not going to find to be determined or
No.
on a duplex.
No.
So what did you do before? You had your assistant and this super fancy calculator
Well,
and all those things.
Before it was the same thing, except I didn't have an assistant. That's the only difference. Now I have a very valuable team member, Samantha, who a lot of Best Ever listeners have interacted with, either through emailing info@joefairless for free spreadsheets that we have on raising money. By the way, you can do that if you haven't already. We have a spreadsheet for how to gather all the information for investors that you have and organize your thoughts, and in particular identify the right people to go after, which we talked about last week. You can go watch that video or listen to that episode. And by the way, Best Ever listeners, in case you didn't realize, we're recording this episode live on Monday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you have a chance next week to catch that on the Facebook page, Meet Joe Fairless. It's facebook.com/Meet Joe Fairless. Definitely do that. You'll hear this episode before it actually goes live on the show. But other than the working with Samantha, it's the same process as before. So that's really it.
Cool. Doing a transition and talking about some branding stuff? Or got
Yeah.
anything to say about the deal?
Yes, branding stuff. So let's talk about that. You had brought it up because I was recently interviewed on a podcast, someone else's podcast, and they asked a couple questions, and you thought a couple of the topics would be beneficial for the Best Ever listeners to learn about.
Yeah, so you got asked the exact question that you got asked was, what counts and doesn't count with brands?
Mm-hmm.
So, what are things that work when you're trying to build your brand, and what are things that don't work when you're trying to build your brand? We talk about thought leadership a lot. We talk about the book today. That's obviously a branding piece. We're recording on Facebook Live, and we're doing a podcast right now. So obviously those are things that work. And we've done a podcast before that listed all the things that are these are what you should do to be a good thought leader. But we haven't focused too much on what doesn't work or what won't work unless you actually have a brand. So maybe we can kind of touch on that. And I guess an example that we can start off with is that one of your clients was trying to find deals, and you mentioned how hey, you should maybe focus on thought leadership first and have people kind of be comfortable with you and know who you are before you start asking them for money, because if you don't know who you are and you don't have really any experience in real estate, the only other way that you can, maybe not the only other way, but another good way to kind of gain experience is through thought leadership and putting out content for people. And so I guess I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, and when we say brands, some people have a negative connotation towards that. I interviewed someone who did, and I guess I understand that. But what we're basically talking about is the image for our business. If our business is ourself, then it's building the image for ourself within the business sphere. And the important thing with brands or building your image is that we have to be known for something, and we are already known for something among our friends and family. If you haven't created a brand, if we haven't created something, we're already known for something. It's just, what is that? What are we currently known for? And the purpose behind having a more strategic approach on thought leadership is because it focuses the conversation on things that matter towards your business. Because right now we might be known as a good person who is true to their word, and a former someone who is formerly in sales or marketing. Okay, cool. But how does that help me if I'm, say, a wholesaler? How does that help me get more deals? Well, the true to your word part certainly does, because you're going to have a lot of people who trust you out the gate. But it doesn't necessarily position the conversation the way that you want it to be positioned entirely, because it's not focused on real estate. Therefore, in order to have a successful real estate company, we have to have the conversation focused more on real estate specific stuff. And how we do that is we can just be in the business for ages and ages, and then people start talking about us, or we can make a more concerted effort and have a thought leadership platform that allows us to create the conversation around real estate as it relates to us. And that's all that this is about. And what I was talking to my client about was, instead of looking for deals, if we don't have the money lined up, then perhaps taking a step back and not looking at the deals and looking at what type of thought leadership platform. So that can be an in-person meeting, that could be a podcast, that could be a YouTube channel, that could be maybe you do a bunch of Facebook Live videos, maybe you host maybe you have a blog that you do daily, but having conversation revolve around this, because one thing that you mentioned earlier before we started recording was a point that I said about word of mouth being the number one influencer of purchase intent. So if we want people, and this is not just real estate related, this is everyone, but we just happen to be focused on real estate. If we want people to buy, then we need word of mouth referrals, because when we have a word of mouth referral, I know from my advertising days, I was the youngest VP of a New York City advertising agency. I know from those days and the research that we did that the number one way to have people buy your product or service is to have others recommend it to them who they know, like, and trust.
Yep.
And that's the long way of growing our business. But when we have thought leadership, we expand our reach, and we have more and more people talking about us. And it's not necessarily about our hard sales, our product. It's about what we're saying about the industry, which is much more important than what we have to sell, because it allows a way in for a lot of people, and it allows us to be positioned as business partners, not salespeople.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if you didn't have to have a brand, but it's so clear that you have to have some sort of brand. I think the problem that people probably have with the word brand is just kind of the word itself. But if you just call it something different, like thought leadership, it's like, oh, okay, because it's basically the exact same thing. But in regards to the, when a word of mouth, I think we kind of talked about this either last week or the week before about validation. It might have been one of the podcasts. No, it was. I think it was 2 weeks ago. When we were talking about, when you're starting a business, one of the most important things in order to kind of get proof of concept for a product of some sort or a service is you need to get validation, you need testimonials. And I think you actually sent me an article about copy editing from Forbes, and that was one of the things too. Is like you need to have some sort of validation from your peers or from somebody. But something I read this morning, kind of about the also the word of mouth referrals, is that 10,000 fans article. It's like one of the most popular marketing blog posts ever. And
Because it's Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, because it's Tim Ferriss.
Promoting it.
Yeah, it was in Tim Ferriss's book. That's a perfect example, right? So I mean, this guy wrote this article, and I'm not sure who I have no idea who wrote it. The only reason I know that this article exists is because Tim Ferriss, who has a massive brand, like everyone knows who Tim Ferriss is. He's known for like the being the guinea pig. Or another perfect example of someone that has a humongous brand is Trump, and now he's president. So whatever you think about the guy, he's a huge brand, and everyone knows who he is. And when you think about him, you think luxury and everything like that. But there's really no reason why the way he looks or you should think that way. It's just because he's built a huge brand. But in the 1,000 fans, it basically says that if you focus on kind of getting 1,000 true fans, they'll buy your things no matter what. Like no matter what you make, they're going to buy it. If you're a musician, you make a regular CD, they'll buy it. If you want on tape cassette, they'll buy the exact same one, or they'll buy the MP3 version of it. And you would think like, oh well, if I have 1,000 fans and I'm only making $10 per fan, like that's only $10,000 a year. Like how's that going to work? Well, obviously it's more complicated than that, because if you have 10,000 or 1,000 actual true fans, then on the surface of that you'll have people that kind of like you, they'll buy some of your stuff. Then you've also got your 1,000 true fans that are so obsessed with your product that they're all going to talk about it, right? Think about CrossFitters. All they can talk about is CrossFit constantly. I'm sure that's how CrossFit got so huge, because they get these people that are super obsessed with it. So maybe we can attach that article to this blog post, but or this podcast. But it was just so interesting to. It makes sense, obviously, but if you gotta just focus on truly adding value to a handful of people and focusing on those people, that the chain reaction can kind of go out and reach, as far as it just happens to go.
To the book Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, he puts all of the podcast interviews to date in a book. One of the interviews he did was with Seth Godin, and Seth Godin, as I'm sure a lot of Best Ever listeners recognize his name, but if you don't know, he's a super savvy marketer, and if you just search Seth, I believe, in Google, then his blog comes up, something ridiculous.
I think it's
like
Seth's blog.
Seth's blog or something. Yeah, you'll find it. Anyway, Seth mentions in the interview, his recommendation to people is to start as small as you possibly can with your audience. So be as narrow as possible and then reach that audience. Once you reach that audience, continue to build from there. But make sure you start small, you get a loyal following, or some people call it tribe or community, whatever. You get a loyal group of people and then continue to build from there. Now, doing some honest self-assessment, I did not follow that approach because my podcast is the best real estate investing advice ever. Sure, I have narrowed our community to real estate investors, but I could have started with multifamily syndication and had a podcast focus entirely on that. I'd like to say I made a conscious effort or a conscious decision not to do that, but quite frankly, I didn't think of it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't, because it's allowed me to get more perspective across different business models, and it's reinforced why I'm choosing to go this way. But either way would have been more successful, or either way would have been successful because I was going to do it daily regardless. It would have been much more challenging doing a daily podcast on multifamily syndication. I would have to get very creative with the 300 so people a year I interview, and there would be a lot of repeat guests. But think about, Best Ever listeners, think about when you're creating something. It can be, maybe it's a type of investing, maybe lease options or wholesaling. Well, I don't know if wholesaling is investing. Lease option strategy, or doing some sort of targeted approach to certain renters. I'll tell you something controversial. You ready for something controversial? Who did I come across? Who told me this? It was someone I met in person, and he wasn't in real estate, but his friend was. And his friend has made a lot of money in real estate. And he's like, but this is I can't remember who I came across who told me this. But anyway, they said that their friend makes a lot of money in real estate. And I was like, well, that's cool. I'm in real estate too. He's like, yeah, I know. That's why I want to let you know. I was like, well, how does he do it? He's like, well, he doesn't like talking about it. And I was like, why doesn't he like talking about it? He said, well, he again, this is out there. I had never heard it before. He said, well, he has recognized that pedophiles, after they are released from prison, they don't have anywhere to live because no one wants them to live next to them. And so what this investor has done is he has created, he's bought 4plexes and 6 units and 12 units, and he only rents out to people who have been arrested for child pornography and whatever else disgusting stuff. And he rents out to them, and he's made a lot of money doing it. That's the type of stuff where I would have never come across it, for better or worse. I would have never come across those types of business models. And it's just, they're takeaways that, say what you will about that approach. I'm sure everyone has an opinion on that approach. But just learning one takeaway we can have from that approach, though, is identifying what are the market needs, and what market has not been served, and what can we do to serve the market. And again, a lot of disclaimers on what I just said. I mean, clearly it's a little off the tracks, but the takeaway is applicable to everyone from a branding or marketing standpoint, where we've got to identify where are the needs and then fill those needs.
Yeah, that's like a. So I would think that you could probably do the same thing with drug offenders too, just because they have difficulties finding houses. It's kind of like just a supply and demand thing. It's really high demand because pedophiles can't get houses, but the supply is low because no one's going to give it to them. I think I remember you saying to me before, and I was like, I wonder what else that there is that people that are like that cannot find houses that would need. And the only one I could think of was drug dealers too. But something that I want to kind of play off of that too is when you were talking about how, for your podcast, you wish you would have niched down more and been closer to multifamily syndication. But when I look at it, I look at that as like kind of one little component that you can narrow down on. Whereas for you more narrow down on the daily, right? And so there wasn't there wasn't a daily podcast out there, and so that was kind of like your niche is a person that wanted a daily podcast that couldn't get it elsewhere, right? And especially, I think that's so huge for people that are newer. Because I remember when I first started real estate investing, like there was like before I came across you, I was like, man, I want more of this. Like this is so cool. I want to learn so much more. But all I can find are these weekly podcasts. So I'm just like sitting there every week waiting, and I'm super excited for the next one to come out. Whereas now it's like, one comes out every single day. So you listen to them daily, every single day, and get as much, kind of get that whatever it is you get from getting the information. Because again, people we're human beings. We love to grow and learn, and so you're also kind of like niching on those people that want to grow and learn. And I think you can just for kind of anything that anyone does, you can make the resolution super, super low and be like, it's just real estate investing. Or you can go really high resolution, like, it's real estate investing, it's daily, there are interviews, podcasts, US the best ever advice constantly all the time. And so I think you actually did follow.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Good point. Good point. Yes. No one in the world has done a daily pod. No one's as crazy as I am to do a daily podcast for almost 3 years now. So you're right. That is a differentiating feature. Because I can say this is the world's longest running daily real estate podcast, and it will continue to be. And we were talking earlier, and then we'll wrap this up. We were talking earlier about what we did this past weekend, and one of the things that I did with Colleen, my fiance, is we wrote out what is our life like on a Monday 10 years from now. And we wrote out from morning to night everything that took place from morning to night. And it was a Monday 2027. One of the things that I'm still doing in 10 years is a daily real estate podcast. And I mentioned to you that on that Monday you were coming over here and we were doing another one of these videos 10 years from now on the show. And I was at $2 billion worth of real estate that my company had under management and we had ownership in. Right now, as of today, it's $102 million, not including about $30 million that we have under contract that we're scheduled to close in March, the month of March. That was a very eye-opening exercise, especially when you compare it, if you have a significant other, and when you compare it with your significant others. We were very aligned on what was happening in 10 years, probably because we've talked about it a lot. Having a kid and doing some professional things that Colleen wants to do, and growing my company, it was a very effective exercise, and it was an exercise. I think we've mentioned Tim Ferriss like 4 times already. I'll mention it one more time. It's an exercise I learned about on a Tim Ferriss interview with a woman who is a designer. I forget her name, but it's one of the more recent episodes that he did. and she did it, and she is a professor at School of Visual Arts in New York City, and she does it with her students there. So if you have an exercise if you want to look at and envision where you'll be in 10 years, then I recommend doing that exercise, and even do it with independent of your significant other, and then look at it afterwards and see where you two are aligned and where you aren't.
Yeah, I love that exercise, and I think me and Marcella are going to do that for sure. I think that's a really good idea, and I'm sure we could talk about this so much longer, but I think we want to wrap this guy up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Best ever listeners, we want to hang out with you and learn alongside with you in February, and that is at the Best Ever Conference. Obviously, you've heard of this by now. Have you signed up? If you haven't, then what are you waiting for? We are ready to start getting things in motion on the planning side in terms of having conversations with everyone who signs up. Yes, we're actually, Ben from our team is actually calling everyone who signs up for the conference. He's going to start those calls soon, and he's going to learn exactly what you want to get out of the conference, and I'm personally going to customize my keynote at the conference around what the responses are from those conversations that Ben has with you and everyone else who signs up. Go to besteverconference.com, and if you sign up and you mention or you put in the code BUDDY, BUDDY, then you will get 25% off your ticket, and mention Buddy in that little code thing, and you'll get someone else who of your choosing to come with you for that 25% off. So just put in Buddy and order 2 tickets, and you'll each get 25% off your tickets. So go to besteverconference.com. Hope to meet you in Denver, February 24th, 25th. Put in the code BUDDY. That's only going to be active until the end of the month. So January 31st will be the last day the Buddy code will be active. Go to besteverconference.com and hope to see you there. Theo, where can the Best Ever listeners learn more about you?
TheoHicks.org is my website/blog where I post the Unplugged podcast weekly. So check it out.
Cool. And you'll be at the conference
I'll be at the
in
conference.
February. All right.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Best Ever listeners, great hanging out, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.